Welcome back to Counter Culture, where we talk about things that go against the norm. Right, pretty much is what we are, against the norm. Right. This could be a song.
Oh,
against the wind, against the norm.
Wind, against the norm.
Yes, there you go.
Against the norm.
That's a great song. Hey, I want to go to Matthew chapter 5, right?
Yes.
We were talking this morning, and then it got me thinking, and I just got stuck on that, right?
Right.
So, how about if you start reading in about verse 38 through 41, or 42. 42 would be good.
Verse
38 through 42.
You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you.
Now, we were talking about your fine hat that you were wearing, and you came in this room and put it on Bob Benson's head.
Yes.
And
he looked quite striking in it.
We were astounded at how dignified he looked.
Very.
Man, he cleaned up well.
With a hat.
He did. Just imagine if you had all of the tools available. But you put it on his head, and I said, hey, are you going to give him your hat? And your response was super profound to me. It was,
well, I wouldn't want to give him a used hat.
No, but you were willing to give him the hat because it would give you a reason to go get a new hat.
Which means it was all about me, and here's the rest of the world spinning out.
So when we look at this section of Scripture, right?
Can one have too many hats? I just had one given to me Sunday.
I don't. Do you think that one could have too many shoes? I mean, if you can't have too many shoes, then you can't have too many.
That would be sinful, to have too many shoes.
I think so. If you have to make a new room in your house,
oh my gosh,
does
that person think they're royalty or something, or some sort of diva?
I don't understand.
Diva?
But once you rise to the level of executive producer, I guess you get unlimited shoes. You and I need to rise to the occasion.
I'll just tell you, some of those shoes I've seen,
you wouldn't wear them.
I wouldn't.
That's a good thing. But there is someone in this building that is
very
fond of them.
Not who.
That's right. They're very fond of those shoes.
Okay, so giving Bob my hat.
That's right.
I'm not under conviction yet.
So there's no conviction here.
No conviction.
Jesus talks about in this section doing something really, really hard, right? You read it. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. When you hear that, and you are pastor extraordinaire, how do you explain that to people? Because that isn't, I could bring up a whole bunch of examples. People have brought up things like, well, why are you going to carry a gun to church? When Jesus said, don't resist the person who's evil.
Well, you're not resisting, you're just going to take him out.
It's true.
Resisting, that means you let him do it, but no, I'm not going to push against him. I won't push against him. You just take him out. That's the whole point, Andrew. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Now we finally will get a whole bunch of people going.
What?
And YouTube will just turn us off. So,
yes.
Really, what's Jesus saying in this whole thing? Is it more complex than it looks?
Well, this is the interesting. It looks different in every situation, I think. What does it look like to resist? The way I may resist, resisting someone may be refuting them. Yeah. Saying, well, I appreciate not arguing, not getting into a scuffle or anything like that, but didn't Jesus resist the Pharisees? It was a form of resistance when he said, no, I'm not going to accept that. Here's what my position is. If I'm resisting you, it doesn't mean I just kowtow and say, okay, you're right, Andy, I'll just do what you want. No, it says, well, Andy, I appreciate what you're saying, but here's where I have a problem with what you're saying.
Yep.
And that is resisting. And it's so what, I don't know, my phone, what would resist me? I don't know what the Greek word here says. We could do a lot with that. I don't have my Greek stuff in front of me to determine that, but
That's what happens when you surprise people.
well, you surprised me and I'm not prepared. So now I got to go home and figure out what the Greek word for resist is and what it means in this situation. But and just off the, I think resisting can look in different ways.
I love that. Again, Jesus was pushed to the edge of the cliff, right? When he'd been in the synagogue, he'd been teaching. They didn't like what he was teaching,
Right.
so the
Right.
crowd got him. They took him down to the cliff. They were going to throw him over, and it says he went through. Yeah,
Just zips out.
just goes
Yeah.
goes through them. He resisted.
Yes.
Right. He didn't
Yeah.
let.
He
them
didn't
throw
go
him
along
over
with
the-
it. Yeah.
Right, and we would definitely say that that's evil. So I think you're right. In the New Testament, in the Gospels, we see Jesus, right, resisting. We see him responding in many different ways. In the boat, right, the storm just suddenly comes upon us. There's a lot of people think that was the enemy trying to take out Jesus, right? That was evil in nature, right? A storm just happens to come upon him, and again, Jesus stopped the storm. He didn't just say like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and take me out and everything. No, I said no.
But when we're looking at this from a countercultural standpoint, right, it is so easy to get reactionary right now in life.
Yes.
Right? We have elections coming up in a little bit,
Yes.
a couple weeks, and we know what's going to happen that night. People are so divided in this whole thing that people are going to get frustrated and upset and if it doesn't go their way, if it goes their way. We see it in church all the time. Right? We see it in church where people, are constantly being divided by little things and fighting back, right? So if there are times, how do we negotiate through this and figure out when should we resist it? Maybe when should we not resist?
I had someone ask me the question that why is it important to you? I'm not talking about a certain debate that went on in New York a couple nights ago when one candidate asked them, why is it so important to you that criminals be put in jail? I'm not going to reference what state that was or who the candidates were.
Smart idea.
But there are times that, I was talking to this person, I got a little upset about something someone else had done because I saw how it was going to affect someone. And I was not there, but someone had told me what happened, and I was ready to go resist in another way. And not physically, but just say, what is the matter with you? Why would you do that to this person? That's abuse, and et cetera, et cetera. I would like to do it for a certain high office in the United States and say to the certain family, this is elder abuse.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you doing that? But as I said to my dad, I would never do that to you. But, how do we resist? I don't think it has to be, and we've lost the art of discussion in this country. And it can happen in theological circles as well, as you well know. Well, I don't agree with that, Andy, and so you must be wrong. Because we got to be right. There is something in us that says, I've got to be right. And really, if you want to get down to it, the Hebrew way of, and we do this what is the name of this ministry? Drash Ministries. And so, you and I sit here, and you may say something, well, I don't agree with that. And I put out another position. Okay, I didn't think about it that way. We don't listen to learn and just to listen. We listen to how am I going to respond and how can I be right?
Yep. Oh,
and assuming we know what that person's going to say instead of, and how many times does this happen to you? And the person jumps in and says, I wasn't going to say that.
Yep.
It happened to me recently, and I've got to go clean this up and say, wait a minute here. You thought I was going to do this, which, you chose to say this, and I wasn't asking you to say this, and, it's got to be because we don't listen.
I love what you said.
And to say, I was, there's a wonderful phrase, I think we've talked about this before. There's several phrases I use when I just want to say to someone, I heard you, I'm going to think about it before I do anything about it. One of the ways, ultimately, the phrase is, I acknowledge your position, promise to wait carefully before taking any action. I heard you. I'm going to think about it.
Yeah.
I didn't say how long. I may not need to think about it long before I do anything about it. And my decision, what I may do about it, is nothing. There's other ways I do it. How interesting.
Yep.
How interesting.
I love what you're saying there. That whole listen to learn. We listen to influence. We listen to change minds. We listen
Yes.
to get our way. Right? It's what I thought about the hat thing. Unfortunately, it was convictional in nature because too often I'm that way. I would give you this
Yeah.
and go out and immediately go buy
Well,
a
and
different
maybe the
replacement.
gift to Bob was to help him see, because he may say, "Well, this is a nice hat, but I need one different."
Yeah.
But it was a gift to him to help him see how debonair,
Well, and again,
suave,
maybe
charming.
it gets him going. How interesting.
How interesting!
Never thought about my
I
life
never
this
thought
way.
about wearing a hat like this. It could change his life.
That's where, well, and isn't that where we want people to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even on Sunday mornings, as we're presenting the gospel to people, we would really love for them to sit back and go, "How interesting." Let me
I never
think
thought about that.
Right?
Yeah.
I never. But how we do that is so important, right?
Yes.
Again, I wish that we could have debates, political debates, church debates, family debates, any kind of debates, where you actually could, as an opponent, take a second and go, "You might have a point there. I've never thought about it that way." But we're not allowed to in debates because it's about beating the other person up.
And we reserve the right. I reserve the right to change my mind.
Yeah.
And you could say something. You know what? You're right. And that and is, oh, heaven forbid that I actually learned something from Andy Flood.
Yeah.
And it could change the way I handle things.
Well, I think it's amazing because we look at Peter, James, John, and the rest of the disciples, and I think somehow we think that in the 3 years they were with Jesus, they never really changed. The same fiery Peter from minute one is the same one at the end.
Yeah.
They most certainly changed their viewpoint on a whole bunch of things.
I like The Chosen. So there's
Yeah,
some people
I do
that have
too.
issues. I love The Chosen. One of the things I love about it, and there's one episode in season 2 where Jesus is healing people
Yep.
all day long.
Yep.
And the disciples are sitting around watching him, trying to not let too many people take up his time. And then they start bickering at each other. Well, you did this, and you were Matthew, you were like robbing people, and yeah, but you did that, And then he walks by, totally exhausted, and they're like, "Oops,
Yeah.
oops, we missed it."
Well,
And so, how many times have we are? What I love is it shows them as real people,
Yeah.
and they were. And that, as I talked about in one of my Chasing the Winds that I did this morning, that Christ be fully developed in us. And that is because someone challenges us on the way we're thinking. And that's not bad.
Nope.
And it does not mean that you are a failure or that, there is something wrong with you if you say, "You know what, I need to probably change my mind on that.
Yeah, I think
I used to think this, but now I have, because, here's the wonderful thing. It means you've grown.
Yeah.
You've learned,
Yeah.
and you're not stuck.
I think what Jesus is saying in this passage, really the essence of it is, let's not be reactionary in nature, right? Let's not respond and let evil goad us into doing
Right,
evil,
right.
And that's the problem. Too often, my sin makes it okay for you to sin. And that's just simply not a truth.
Right, yeah.
Right? But we're just constantly feel like I can respond to you any way I want to because you did something wrong or you responded to me poorly.
Yeah.
And Jesus saying, no, let's not do that.
As a friend of mine said to me one time, they get to decide what kind of adult they want to be.
Yeah.
And I get to decide the kind of adult I want to be. And I don't always do that really well.
Love it.
I have my moments, but other people do too. And it reminds me to have grace for them like I would want them to have for me. And sometimes they don't give that, but that's okay. I'm going to ask for it anyway.
Love it. Perfect. Well, that's a great place to end this counterculture. We'll see you next time on Counterculture.
Grace and peace.